heard may be graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely it's really
Just, I love stories like this because it's
people just so scared to death.
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
There are countless stories
bad
about people that you shouldn't fuck with.
Right, and the JFK assassination limo.
Real.
You're in the right place at the right time. Deep from the mistake on the lake. I already messed it up and I'm 30 seconds in. Not even. From the mistake on the lake, deep within the Great American Rust Belt. This is Type 3 TV. I'm your host, John Baczynski, alongside Dan, Stephen Rady.
Whoop. What is happening?
And, well, very emphatic. And a very highly articulate, highly knowledgeable, long-haired Steve Buddha Gibson.
Highly articulate is correct.
And you got some pretty long hair, too.
Ball hair.
Uh,
Moving on.
all right. Well, good evening, everybody. Gentlemen, how was your week? It is now Thursday. We are one day away from the weekend.
It is now Thursday, and we are one day away from Friday.
Yes. Well, no. I mean, we're hours away from Friday.
Friday Eve.
About 4.
We are one day away from Halloween.
No, we're not.
Hey, but you can imagine.
Yes. No. That Veronica Vaughn. I know from experience. No, you don't. So, how was your guys' week?
Pretty uneventful.
Yeah.
It was
What do you
grueling.
think? I don't think too much happened, yeah.
Yeah.
Sat on my ass a lot, so.
Were you on vacation this week?
No, I just didn't do a lot. I just was working on that new song and that Photoshop, my photo that I was doing, and just a couple, a bunch of projects, so not really too much any interest.
You were hanging out with an alien in that photo.
I was, yeah. Like that?
From what star system? Zeta Reticuli? Alpha Centauri?
I don't know if that's going to come out in the song or not. That's a good question.
Are we going to talk about the fact that the alien has no thumb?
That was done by design.
How does it operate? How does it operate the controls of the spaceship?
Well, I mean, it's got enough.
It's an alien.
Yeah.
And it's got
Maybe
3
it's
claws.
The fuck does that mean?
Yeah, but it could be telepathic.
Yeah.
Right.
Judging by the looks of that alien, it's not telepathic. Hey, why is he wearing a gold chain?
Because
Why is all right.
he's a
Good evening,
gangsta
everybody.
alien, okay?
Why is that alien hanging out with Jim Rockford?
Yeah, I don't. That's a good question. I kind of look like Jim Rockford, don't I, a little bit?
In that picture, maybe a little bit. We need to get that picture so we can put it in the stream, but maybe next week. You know, when you're ready to debut the song, we should debut it on the show.
I'm down with that. That's fine. Yeah.
The Illusionary Apollo.
That's right.
So nothing else new? Nothing.
Nah, not really. Same.
Noteworthy.
Nah, same old crap.
Dan, I think you should have grew out your mustache.
It is grown out.
No, I mean like an adult.
Oh, shut the fuck up, asshole.
All right.
Anyway, no. The only interesting thing that did happen, I don't know if you guys saw my Facebook. I almost took out an Amish chick on some rollerblades.
That
was
wicked
very
BMX
entertaining.
skills.
Well, yeah. So go into that a little bit, real quick.
So basically, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. I was bike riding on my mountain bike, and I was going on the regular trail. This is in Amish country near Middlefield, and it was getting a little bit dark. And I went down a hill, and I gained a lot of speed. Well, these 3 Amish chicks that were rollerblading, one of them, and I didn't see it because it was around the corner, but one of them wiped out and fell directly like horizontal across the damn trail. As I came around, I could not stop in time because I only have one set of brakes. I don't have front brakes. I only have rear brakes, which is stupid on my part, I know. But I hit the brake.
How do you only have front brakes?
I only have rear brakes, not front
I'm
brakes.
sorry. Well, how do you only have rear brakes?
The pads came off. They fell off, and I just was too lazy to.
I thought maybe it was like, the 10-year-old bike style where you got to pull the pedals backwards to brake.
Oh no! Hell no! No. But so I hit the brake. The ass end of the rear end of the I kind of like fishtailed a little bit. Then I still didn't have enough speed, so then I went into a ditch. Went sideways, came out of the ditch, went airborne, landed really hard, broke my chain, or my chain actually kind of snapped back off the gear. And I had to hit the brake again, and before I went into the other opposite side ditch. A lot of other people, I'll just say this, a lot of other people that didn't have the skill to do that would have ran that chick right over, would have just wiped out themselves and ran her right over. It was pretty close.
For claiming to be
and she got up and
level
laughed.
type driver,
I told him,
you've avoided quite a few disasters, except for when you were trying to go like less than a mile an hour in reverse in my development.
Yeah, I know.
What is he
I'm
doing?
gonna have to retry that again.
Yeah.
But no, and then the thing was when she got up, I was, she said, they asked me if I was okay. I'm like, I'm fine. Are you guys okay? Everybody was fine, thankfully. But I was about ready to say, why don't you get one of your horse and buggies and tow my fucking ass back to my car, because I had to walk my bike back to my car.
So how long did that take?
Oh, about 2 hours.
Yeah. And this was Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday.
Oh, well, at least you didn't have to go to work the next day.
Oh, yeah, but it was an adventure, man, let me tell you, because I couldn't ride my bike back because my chain was, I didn't have the tools or anything with me, so.
You don't keep a toolkit on your bike?
No, I probably should, but, I don't bike enough to do it, so I only do this once in a while.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's probably stupid. I should have it.
Do you wear biker
I should wear a
shorts?
helmet. No. I was wearing jeans.
Then you're not
I should be wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, yeah. And I see a lot of people biking, and I don't see too many people not wearing helmets. I remember for a long time a lot of people didn't wear them. But
Yeah.
I don't know what's caused all this awareness over the years for people to start wearing more bike helmets, but
And I really should, because I've taken some pretty crazy, just recently, mountain biking trails where they're like next to hills and up and down, and if I'd wipe out, I'd probably crack my head open. But
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Do you wear a helmet when you go on a hike?
No. Yeah, absolutely, man.
only when he's taking a nap.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, not too much going on over here. It's a busy week. I'm looking forward to the weekend, just kind of taking a break here, hitting the reset button, but nothing major going on in this side of things. So, let's get some news taken care of real quick. Let's see here. All right, so firefighters, this is from UPI.com, are weird news stories, but firefighters, woman stranded on cliff was a movie mannequin. Firefighters called to a California beach to conduct a cliff rescue arrived to find the reported person clinging to the rocks was actually a mannequin from a movie shoot. The Santa Barbara County Fire Department said witnesses at Hope Ranch Beach called 911 to report a woman appeared to be stranded at the side of the cliff without proper climbing gear. Firefighters arrived with trucks, drones, and utility vehicles, but the would-be rescuers soon discovered the woman, quote, was actually a mannequin from a movie shoot days earlier. The department said the witnesses did the right thing by calling 911.
I really wonder how they couldn't tell. I mean, and maybe it was a far distance away, but I mean, how do you not realize that was not a human being?
I mean, dude, like from this picture here, I mean, it could easily, and this one's taken from a drone too. So like from a distance, it looks like somebody could be clinging to a mountainside or something. But yeah, so
I find it like so odd that, people that see something that essentially you can't really make out, so you just assume is possibly someone in danger or, that needs help. And everybody's like calling whether, just like some type of emergency services. And then you have like someone just getting the shit kicked out of them, and everyone's like, let's just stand around and record it. Like someone you see in immediate danger, and they're like, nah, I'm just going to record this. But then someone that's like far off in the distance, and you're like, it may or may not be someone in a life-threatening situation. Let me err on the side of caution and just call.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
This one's here out of New York and the Canada border. Now, this does have to do with COVID, so I'm going to try and keep it quick. But I thought it was kind of an interesting story. A New York couple whose wedding plans were interrupted by border closings from the COVID-19 pandemic held a ceremony at the U.S.-Canada border so the bride's parents and grandmother could attend. Karen Mahoney and Brian Ray, ski instructors who live in Caddyville, New York, said that they were hoping for the Canadian border to be reopened in time for the wedding day when they planned it for September. But they had come up with a new plan when the date approached and the crossings remained banned. So it says Mahoney, who met Ray 35 years ago when he taught her how to ski, said it was important to her parents that the 96-year-old grandmother who live in Quebec attend her wedding. She's my only living grandparent and the only grandparent I've ever known, so it was important for me to be there, or for her to be there, on the happiest day of my life. But I'm just surprised here that, again, they look like they're off the side of the road here, but I just don't know how they were able to get people, close to the border and then do this wedding. I don't know. I thought it was kind of weird.
Off topic, did you see, it's not like a new story, but it's new to me, that like during all the lockdowns and everything in 2020, there was that orchestra that was like stranded in a German castle. And then it said that they were, it was quote unquote a haunted German castle, and they weren't allowed to leave because of the pandemic. And then they said the castle was like surrounded by wolves, just like straight out of like a horror movie.
Jeez.
No, I didn't hear that
I can
at
read
all.
it to you real quick.
Yeah, bring it up.
Bolivian orchestra group has been stranded in a German castle for 73 days after the countries closed their borders during the coronavirus pandemic. Musicians, some who are as young as 17 years old, arrived in Germany for the spring concert just as COVID kicked off, pretty much. And it says, however, their concerts were soon called off. Germany imposed a gathering ban, and then all the flights back to Bolivia were canceled. So they were pretty much just stuck at this. It's called the Rheinsberg Palace, and it's a 600-year-old castle located an hour and a half northwest of Berlin.
This sounds like a place that you'd want to be stuck at.
Dude, it sounds super cool, actually. And here's one of the quotes. Our bus broke down on the motorway, and I remember joking that it was bad luck and perhaps our concerts would be canceled, but never did I think it would actually happen. And then, like I said, it's evidently they were like, the castle was surrounded by wolves, and they could like hear them all howling throughout the night. Let's see. It says, the castle grounds and surrounding woodland are also home to more than a dozen packs of wolves. And one of the people mentioned they had seen 3 wolves while out for a walk, and I froze in fear, but they were just play fighting and then moved on. And I don't know. I mean, it's, nothing happened, but it is just kind of like, holy shit, you guys are stuck in a castle for 73 days. That's like 2.5 months almost, something like that. And
I wonder if it was like a huge cat, one of those real big ones.
Well, it's 600 years old. I mean,
Probably
I would
is.
imagine
the picture of it, the
be
picture of
pretty
it
big.
doesn't look very castle-like, like you're thinking of like medieval Europe.
Right.
But I mean, either way, still pretty cool.
Do you think they jammed while they were like bored and not?
What
doing-
else would you do?
Yeah. They probably are the greatest orchestra on planet Earth right now.
Right. But it does sound like the beginning of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Are they
provide
still
the
there? Are they
soundtrack
gone?
For sure.
No, that was in 2020.
Oh, okay.
So that was
Gotcha.
like right in the beginning.
Gotcha.
If you would have listened to me, you would have known that.
Think about that. How long were they there? 78 days?
73 days. So
Yeah.
it's like 2.5 months.
What about like all the plumbing and stuff? Like,
What do you mean?
well, the infrastructure. There's no plumbing. How
No,
do you
dude,
even-
I'm sure that shit's updated by now.
Yeah, he said you're saying it's not like the old medieval type castle.
Well, I meant
say that?
like architecturally it's not, but I mean usually with a lot of the stuff that you see, I can't speak from experience, but just from seeing, like all of that stuff, when they have like tours and people can stay there, it's all updated and it's got electrical, it's got some form of plumbing. Like,
what's the name of the castle?
I just closed it. Sorry.
Well, you'd be surprised because when we stayed at the Stanley a couple months ago or a month and a half ago, they don't have. I mean, not that a castle's gonna have air conditioning, but a lot of those rooms don't have air conditioning in it. They only in like the last, I forget how many years, got heat throughout the entire building for the winter. They used to close every winter up, and I mean, when Stephen King stayed there, they were shutting down the next day for the winter season. So,
Wow.
but you think about how many people were in this orchestra?
It doesn't say.
Yeah, but okay, so let's just say there was more than 10 or 15 people there. Could it sustain that many people for 73 days straight? You got to think like toiletries.
Well, it
Right.
did.
Say 17?
So I think the answer is yes.
Well, I guess so.
No, I said it was there was some as young as 17.
I just think about
I'm
like
sorry. I guess I
and it's
wasn't
called the-
listening to you.
fucking listen.
Yeah, it's called the Rhinesburg Palace.
The Rhinesburg Path. But no, it's like those things that you take for granted.
Well, this place is fairly large, and it looks like it obviously does some type of events and hosting and entertaining. So they probably have like a pretty well stocked, just stock room of toiletries, whatever. I'm sure it has a cafeteria or some type of, probably not a cafeteria, but like a restaurant or something.
It does look.
Yeah. I don't know.
But
It looks much more
Not
updated.
like I was expecting. Yeah, that looks a lot nicer. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, for a second there, I'm thinking that like this thing doesn't have modern amenities, and so, man, I can't imagine being trapped for 70 some days without like a normal working bathroom, heat.
I'm curious how big the grounds are, though.
Yeah, there's a hotel on property. It says too, I think.
Okay, yeah, so that they definitely
Yeah.
were prepared.
All right, yeah. Just picture a bunch of people just hanging out in a castle.
Right.
So, all right. Let's see here. This one's off of the most trusted news source, CNN. Planet with iron rainfalls is even more extreme than scientists thought. CNN.com. On this sizzling exoplanet, hundreds of light years from Earth, droplets of iron rain fall from the sky at night. Now, researchers have also detected sodium and ionized calcium in the planet's atmosphere. Based on the observations from the Gemini North Telescope, which is located near the summit of Mauna Kea in Hawaii, the new findings suggest that the planet named WASP 76b. You think they, like the band Wasp, inspired that?
It's Blackie Lawless is the emperor.
Oh, that's all they do is just jam Wasp on this planet. Well, yeah, it's metal. They got iron rain and shit. Like,
There you go.
that's where you should send them for their next tour. Are they still a band?
Who?
Wasp.
I doubt it.
They had a new song at least within the last couple of years.
Probably not the original band, right?
I mean, Blackie's in it.
Okay, but there are other people are probably all been replaced or whatever.
Yeah. A lot of those bands from like the 80s go through a lot of
Right.
members.
Half the dudes are dead.
That too, yeah.
But yeah, it says the research is part of a Cornell University-led project called ExoGem S, or Exoplanets with Gemini Spectroscopy Survey. The project brings together scientists who study the diversity of atmospheres on exoplanets, which are planets located outside of our solar system. So, Metal Rain sounds like a new song. Buddha, let's get on it. Remember the Chocolate Rain?
Yeah.
Chocolate Rain.
That
That guy jammed. Let's see.
They toured as recent as 2019.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Blackie is the only original.
That's what I figured.
Well, it's I mean, at this point, it's his band, so
Yeah, for
all
sure.
these other guys are probably just hired guns.
The
but
bass player's been there since 95. And apparently the lead guitar player has toured with them on and off since '92.
Oh, so they're older too then. In that
Imagine
band.
that conversation. Sorry, man, you're out of Wasp. Take a hike. Hey, I'm joining this new band, Wasp. Yeah, and then I'm thinking of that Chocolate Rain guy. He was on Tosh, but
Yeah.
he has a good sense of humor. He's like one of like the original viral video YouTubers too, I think. But I don't know. Let's see here. From CNET.com, first moon samples in over 40 years may alter lunar history. Our current views need readjustment about how our long beloved white globe remained warm and volcanically active, says a researcher. In late 2020, a space Chinese capsule delivered fresh moon samples to Earth for the first time in about 4 decades. And these precious lunar rocks just revealed a new detail about our planet's glowing companion. Who writes this? Glowing companion. Its volcanoes were alive and active considerably longer than scientists thought. All of our experience tells us the moon should be cold and dead 2 billion years ago, but it is not. The question is why. Alexander Nemikin, a professor of geology at Australia's Curtin University and author of the analysis published Thursday in the Journal of Science. So, I don't, what does that tell us? I don't really know. I mean, but I thought, okay, we're getting samples back from the moon.
Have you ever heard like some of those interviews with Buzz Aldrin where he talks about like people not actually having the landing being like recorded and it was like an animation? Have you ever heard him talk about that?
No. But
he's kind of like refuted it a couple times.
Well,
and I don't know if I don't know if he's just conveying the fact that like there was never the landing itself was never recorded because they had to set up some type of recording equipment in order to record the landing, like the physical landing, but everything after that was real, or if he's literally just coming out saying like, no, it was all animated. You know what I mean? Like,
well, no, I think the camera that caught Armstrong walking off the moon or, off the LEM, I mean, that was fixated and was able to capture that. But what footage are they saying? Like, there was no outside footage of the landing actually happening. The only thing you ever see is from inside the capsule.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, quickly with the people that, a lot of people say that was all fake and, the whole landing was all, orchestrated and put together. If you ever look at, I mean, John, I know you're a big sci-fi guy and you like special effects and stuff like that. Does anyone ever look at a late 60s or early 70s movie and how atrocious the special effects are in the 60s and early 70s? It's like, I can't nowhere near think that they could fake any of that stuff.
That's a good point you make. And, a lot of there's more power in your cell phone than there was in the command module.
Right.
But, yeah, I agree. I don't think that they could fake anything like that. I mean, there have been really, really strong points to a faked landing, and a lot of the guys that, went to the moon that necessarily didn't, they had issues with it. Neil Armstrong was very, very quiet after he got out of the astronaut program. He was a teacher at, I think it was Ohio State or University of Cincinnati, one of the two, but an aeronautics professor. Buddha and I went to the Air and Space Museum with Rob and another buddy. It's got to be going on almost 10 years ago now, but we were like in the same room as Buzz Aldrin and the Apollo 11 capsule that brought them back to Earth from the first landing. Remember that?
Yeah, and his mic kept cutting out, and he was like, "I talked to Earth from the fucking moon, and you guys can't even figure this out."
He was getting very, very irritated, but
Yeah.
Rob and I both got an autographed book, and I got to shake his hand, so that was pretty cool.
How do you think he would feel if I told him I thought space was kind of gay?
Yeah, well, he did punch that one guy out.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was an honor meeting. I'm like, this guy literally walked on another celestial body, spent 7 days outside of the planet, traveled at 25,000 miles an hour. What is that humming?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Do you turn a fan on, Dan?
No.
It's not me.
No, I don't hear nothing. I mean,
Damn,
I hear it, but it's not.
Can
me.
you mute yourself real quick? I want to see what channel it's on. Yeah, it's definitely on his. Is that his computer?
Wow, really? That's my computer. I can't believe it's out coming through like that.
It's finally going to blow up. Thank God. Dude, all right. Can I bring this up, Dan? What we were texting about earlier before the show?
What was that?
The Photoshop.
Oh, yeah.
Dan is using a copy of an Adobe program from like 2003. It's going on 20 years.
Yeah. But let me explain real quick. I have much newer programs that I use, much newer. I mean, programs that are only like 2-3 years old. I only keep that program because it does, and I know you're probably going to correct me. I know there's probably newer stuff that does this. I just don't have it because all the stuff I have is free. But the program enables me to smear something into a shape. It's not like those claws that I did on the photo. I'm able to take his fingers and smear them into a shape and kind of mold it the way I want. And I have yet to see a photo program that's newer, at least a free one, that you can do anything like that.
Yeah, it's a smudge feature.
Dan, I'm glad that I'm glad that you think the 2003 technology is superior.
Oh, I
Dan's
definitely
talking
don't.
about special effects from the 60s. Dude, your computer is like just ahead of that. Holy
Your
shit.
computer could have been on the space capsule.
I just got a text from somebody, I won't say who, but they're like, damn that hum. All right.
Who was it?
All right, last news story for tonight. Buddha, you might be interested in this one. Diet soda may prompt for food cravings, especially in women. But they also say that this diet products also might not curb appetites, but actually flare them up. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
The diet drinks may be a false promise for some soda lovers. True, they deliver a fizz and a taste of a soda experience without the calories. Yet new research shows that they can also leave people with increased food cravings. A study published recently as evidence that the drinks made with sucralose, is that how you pronounce it? Sucralose?
I don't know.
May stimulate the appetite, at least among some people. And the study gives some clues as to why. We found that with females and people with obesity had greater brain reward activity. And after consuming artificial sweetener, says the author Katie Page, a physician specializing in obesity at the University of Southern California. So, I mean, I know that you don't, Buddha, you really only drink water. Do you ever have soda anymore? I know you keep it in your house, but is that for
No,
guests?
I don't even keep it in my house.
Really? I know you were keeping it there for a while, but you were saying it's just for guests. So when's the last time you actually had a soda?
1998.
I think I had a root beer last year when I went out to eat with my mom and Natalie, and I remember being like, it was all right, but I felt like shit after.
Really? I love Diet Pepsi.
Ugh,
I love it.
horrible.
So good.
The only time I will drink some type of pop is I'll drink ginger ale if I'm sick, but that's it.
Is that a myth that it really helps or not? Or is
No,
it,
ginger actually settles your stomach.
Yeah.
Like that's an actual thing.
And the carbonation helps too?
That I don't know.
Yeah.
Possibly, I guess. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess like anecdotally, I would say yes, because if I drink like a flat ass ginger ale, it definitely doesn't it doesn't have the same effect as if like you have a fresh one.
Right.
I have a friend, I won't mention his name, but he drank, I think he said like 8 bottles of Dr. Pepper a day.
Was it
Drank
Forrest
that.
Gump?
I think I can guess that friend.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not mentioning names, but he drank that, and he
Did he have to
finally,
go pee afterwards at the White House?
he finally
How's
got,
it feel to be an All-American? I've got to pay.
He got sick of, finally took a break from it and only drank like 1 a day. Took a break. He was drinking like water and other stuff, and he lost like 40 pounds in like 5 months.
Was he drinking regular or diet?
No, he's drinking regular.
Well, yeah, I mean all the sugar in there.
I know, but I'm just making a point that how much that actually fucks you up and and makes you unhealthy and that. I mean, he wasn't drinking diet though, so yeah, that has a lot to do with it.
I mean, it's empty calories, and I know I'm not a shining example of peak physical condition, but ever since I really stopped drinking regular soda about a year ago, and I've gotten it down to like 1 or 2 a day of like diet, but it's really hard to quit, man. Like I laugh and joke about people that smoke, but seriously, like when you really enjoy something and doing it on the regular, like I get really irritable if I don't have one.
Right.
And it's a fucking soda.
Are you addicted to caffeine?
I think so. I really do. But
can you function without it? Because I know a lot of people like when you have that regular intake of caffeine, because caffeine is essentially like a drug. I mean, it is addictive, and once your body if it doesn't get that, you will become very fucking sluggish because you're so used to just having that caffeine.
Yeah. I've
actually.
Go ahead, Buddha. Sorry.
I was gonna say I've actually found if I have certain weeks where like I'm working out like every day, the only caffeine I have in my diet is from pre-workout. So if there's like a week where I'm fucking lifting every single day and I'm taking pre-workout every single day, if I come like the following week and I don't do that, I'll feel incredibly sluggish because it's like I've already gotten used to having caffeine every day of the week. And then if I cut it back to like 3 days, I'm like, God damn, like I'm like extra tired. It's just really hard for me to get going.
Yeah. Yeah, I have almost all my beverages now are sugar free, but they're sweetened. So like I know you're going to really hate this one, but I have a Monster, sugar-free Monster every day. That's like my morning coffee. It's like by the time I get to work, that's all. I'm like, I need to open one of these up and have one right now.
Well, I need 2 cups of coffee every morning or I won't function.
Yeah.
So I can't talk.
But yeah, so, but yeah, so that's what I got for the news tonight. Budo, why don't you go first?
All right, so this one, I think I have to kind of do it in a couple parts to kind of explain the backstory. It's I don't know, kind of weird, but anyway. So have either of you guys seen that Netflix movie Veronica or seen of it?
No,
I have not.
No, I'm not familiar either.
All right. So it's like loosely based on this story that's out of Madrid, Spain. And when I say loosely, I don't know. The whole big thing is like, hey, this movie's real scary, but if you listen to, I have not seen the movie by the way, but if you read like the actual story, it's like, oh, it's actually way fucking worse. So I'm going to start with like the backstory of who it involves. And it was this girl named Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro. And basically how it starts off is it says Estefania started dabbling in the occult as a teenager. And this is like per her parents, which led to her and her friends performing a seance at school to try and contact one of her friends' boyfriends who had recently died in like a motorcycle accident or I don't know if they say motorbike. I'm assuming they're talking about a motorcycle, maybe a moped, since it's over in Spain. But anyway, so it says the seance was interrupted by a teacher, and the group described seeing strange smoke going up from the planchette because they were using like a homemade Ouija board that was actually they were doing it at the school. And when the teacher saw what was going on, it said that the teacher actually smashed the planchette. And then when that was done, they saw like smoke come out of it. So over the following 6 months, Estefania started suffering from seizures and hallucinations. And it says sometimes she would go into a rage, like barking at her brothers, or would tell her parents that she saw shadows walking past her room, kind of like the typical stories or signs that you hear of a haunting. So her parents started to worry that, maybe she was kind of losing it. So they took her to see several doctors, and none of them could actually find anything wrong with her. And this is where it gets kind of conflicting, because in different articles, you get different answers of what happened, but I'm just going to go off of what this one says, because this was the most consistent. But it said a few months later, Estefania was found dead in her bedroom, and her death was completely unexplained. That being said, another article also said that she was like checked into a hospital, and that she was actually found dead in the hospital room. I don't know. This story's from like 92. So some of it is actually written in a different language that I don't fucking read. But that's why I said I'm just going off of what seemed to be like the most consistent that you would read from the different articles. Anyway, so her parents said that they thought that her death had something to do with like the seance being broken up, or something to do with the occult. And they themselves started to experience strange things going on in the house after she died. And it said they were haunted by slamming doors, appliances turning on and off. Like they would hear whispers. And allegedly, once they moved, like everything kind of stopped. So that's like the backstory to what actually was going on with the girl. So now to get to kind of like what the actual part of the story that I was trying to explain, bear with me, I'm trying to grit to it real quick. So pretty much after she died, and they started getting like all of these quote unquote like hauntings that were going on, they were like awakened one night. Sorry, I lost my place. Fill in the filler while I find my spot. Dan, do a dance.
Play my music, John.
Yeah, please send me off.
And that'll lead right into my story.
Right.
All right, we'll just go to an oldie but a goodie.
God damn it.
Oh, now you're going to really screw Boot up.
Yeah.
Stop.
Oh.
Come on. All right, so it says, come on. Are you done?
All right.
Just make sure you get it all out of your system. Thank you. That helps. So anyway, so like I said, they would have the stuff happening, like doors slamming, appliances turning on and off, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it says, dawn of November 27th, 1992, one event unfolded, which pretty much just made everything come to a head. And the woman, Estefania's mother, quoted, "I felt pressure on top of me, but there was no one around," she later recalled. "And I said to her husband, I think, there's someone here. I then felt a pair of hands grab my feet, then grab my hand, which were uncovered by the blanket." The terrified couple called the National Police, who arrived to find the couple cowering on the pavement outside their apartment block with their children. And leading the investigation was a police inspector named Jose Pedro Negri, I don't know how that's actually pronounced, but who to this day confides that he remains shaken by a night that he has never fully been able to make sense of. Now, there was an interview given on Spanish television in 2012 to mark the 20th anniversary where he kind of like retells the story of what actually happened. And it says he relived the moments he arrived outside the apartment block to find a nervous and anxious family unable to go back in. And in quote, they said it had been a terrible time. Pictures had been flying off the wall. Picture hooks were jumping out. Plates were flying through the air. And it was something dreadful to see. I asked him why he thought it was happening. And he replied they'd had a daughter who used a Ouija board. And then that she became possessed and then suffered a terrible death. From that point on, terrible phenomena started to appear in the house. So Jose, who was initially skeptical, asked the family to accompany him back in and just kind of said, okay, well, let me take a look around. We'll kind of see what's going on. And he says, I wasn't on my own as 2 other police cars had come too. So there was 6 of us in total to go look. So we went up and explained what had been going on and all the paraphernalia, furniture, and objects strewn around the room. The picture of the daughter was flipped upside down. Jose, who was still skeptical, even if it was, as he put, the kind of stuff that makes your hair stand on end. Of course, it could have been the parents. So the couple then tells the inspector that, this stuff had been happening for a while, and it tended to happen more in like quiet times. So Jose says, I immediately told them to turn off the lights. We were all in a tiny little living room, all of us and the family. And now he's talking about the additional officers as well. Then from one moment to the next, a door in the sideboard slammed open violently again and again. He shouted for his colleagues to turn on the light and immediately searched for hidden gadgets, which might explain what had just unfolded, but there was nothing. At that point, 4 of my colleagues asked if they could leave because they couldn't cope with it, so then it was just the 2 of us. At that point, the family took the duo to the apartment's 2 bedrooms where they said most of the phenomena took place. And he just kind of goes on to say it's a small bedroom, twin beds. The father said that sometimes when he and his little sons are in there, his son would actually be picked up and thrown to the other side of the bed. So, and then he goes on to say, I sat down in the same bedroom to see if anything would happen. We heard a terrible scream behind us, which came from a small balcony. I quickly opened the door and ran out to see if I could see anything, but there was nothing. No fallen stones, nothing. It was 2:30 in the morning, and the noise was dreadful. So on his way back to the bedroom, he notices 2 things that made his spine tingle. When I'd first entered the room, this is in quotes, I noticed they had a large wooden crucifix on the wall, and hanging off was a smaller pearly crucifix, like the one children get at their first Holy Communions. And there was also a poster. Yet, in the few seconds he had been absent, something had changed. The crucifix was turned upside down, and the little crucifix was on the floor. The poster and the door had 3 or 4 deep scratches in them, as if someone had clawed through the poster. And pretty much at that point, he was too scared to stay there any longer, and the couple and the family actually ends up moving, where they were basically convinced to move out of the house. And the thing that makes it where they give it a lot of credibility is that this was actually written in a national police report from Vallecas, which is just like I guess it would be technically like a territory of Madrid. But it says, so a copy of which Jose wrote up what he had witnessed in a police report, and a copy of which we see flashed up at the beginning of Veronica. So they use like the actual police report from the actual Vallecas case in the movie in Veronica, which was, like I said, loosely based on this. So it says it's not meant to be a documentary about it, but it was loosely based on it. And in Spain, it's a very popular story because it says in the film, the only time a police officer has said he witnesses something paranormal, and it's written in a report with an official police stamp, which, one would think would actually lend it more credibility. And then there's actually the actual report on here, which I just want to read to you a snippet of what it actually says. And this is translated because obviously it's not in English, but this is what part of the report actually says. We were with the family. You could hear and see how a perfectly shut cupboard door would open and shut. We checked the door. It was perfect. It moved in an anti-natural way. Moments later, we saw how a tablecloth on a small telephone table was becoming a stain by a brown substance that the inspector identified as drool-like. When we checked the bedrooms of the house, we saw a wooden cross spun upside down, and the metal Christ upon it was ripped off. One of the daughters then placed the cross behind the door on a poster. Then at the same moment, there appeared 3 nail marks, scratches on the poster. And that's the snippet that comes out of the police report. And like I said, believe it or not, you know, whatever you decide, they did take pictures of it, of the poster, and the fact that the police report is, you know, an official police report from the National Police of Spain is kind of why this one is like one of the most popular stories over in Madrid, because it's kind of like the other one I did about the haunting at the house, where it's all quote unquote validated in an official police report. And what reason would the police have to lie on a report of nothing that is like even incriminating anybody? You know, like, I don't know. Why would you do that if you have, what's that?
I'm saying, and those people didn't gain anything out of it either, right?
That's what I was going to say. Like, they just moved. So
Yeah.
it's not like they had anything to gain. Now, you could always take it the other way and say, well, maybe they were in a bad way, or they got some shitty situation going on with the apartment that they lived at. So maybe by the police essentially smearing the report, maybe they were able to get out of a lease or something like that. I don't know. I feel like that kind of thing would have been brought up by now, considering she died in 91 and this stuff happened in 92, which I meant to correct myself. I said 92 earlier, but I guess this happened in 92. She died in 91, but regardless. Yeah. So that.
Bizarre.
Don't everybody talk at once.
I'm sorry. You just
You okay,
stopped
John?
like on a dude, like you just pulled the e-brake.
Well, I fucking said this is what lends it credibility. How much more do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah. I'm speechless.
What do you think? Do you think it's real? You think it's bullshit?
John wanted you to come to some.
I see that.
I mean, I'm always going to decide on this kind of stuff. I told you,
Well,
But do you
yeah.
think?
No, I truly there's more out there than meets the eye, and I know that Dan is skeptical, but myself, no, I believe all this stuff is real.
I mean, it's. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I mean, with me, you know, it just amazes me how it happens to just certain. I mean, I know. How do I want to say this? I mean, there's a lot of stories out there of people that said, you know, this happened, that happened, all these weird hauntings, but it just seems like, why doesn't it happen to more people? Why is it just, you know, one family here, one family there? Why isn't there more of it? Is all I guess my thing. And especially now, we brought this up before or somebody brought this up in the past. Especially now, I can't say this for 92, because 92, no one had, you know, digital cameras and smartphones and all that stuff. So I can see, you know, nothing being filmed. But like you guys mentioned, that house, or Buddha, your one story about the house that happened in 2012, you know, why isn't there more documentation of these? I can't believe the hauntings would stop in the recent era than they did back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Why don't we have more stuff showing, you know?
That's funny you should mention that. Like, okay, so, and this is just kind of an off-the-wall theory, but you know how there's stories of, like, the Men in Black who go and collect, like, videos of UFOs, intimidate people to not talking about what they saw, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What if there's, like, an agency or some person out there or group out there that goes and collects stuff like this, that, and you know, basically covers all of this stuff up? Maybe there's more to it from maybe not a spiritual, or maybe like the Vatican has something like this. I don't know. I'm just
you're saying like
ideas
maybe
out there.
Yep.
Just because I am right there with you, Dan, where I'm a very skeptical person. Like, I like to believe that there is something out there, but you know, with lack of evidence, like there's some stuff that you see where you're like, man, I don't know, I really can't explain that. But, you know, with that being said, like, I'm definitely more on the skeptical side, like, where I feel like when, as far as like the ghost shows and stuff you see on TV, I'm always like, that's bullshit. Like, so much of it is just such
because
bullshit.
somebody's making money off it.
Right.
Right.
Like
So,
reality shows, same thing.
exactly. Okay. But when you get to the point where you have nothing to gain,
Exactly.
back then, I feel is more credible than now, because now, even if you say I have nothing to gain, you have this bullshit society cultural norm of like wanting to go viral, where then you
Right.
could have something to gain from it.
I agree with that.
But let me kind of get back to the point that I was making is, so, you say like, okay, well, if stuff like this happens, where's the recording? At least in this case, they did have pictures. It doesn't mean that it isn't something that a person could have done. It has the police report. Yet again, it's really just one person's word against someone else. Although it does give you a little bit more of kind of officiality, if that's a word. I don't know if that's a word. But because like you're putting your reputation with your job on file by making it a national like certified report, that gives it a little more credibility. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. You sit there and say, well, it only happens to certain people. Okay, well, you have the whole idea of that certain people are, or only specific people are maybe more in tune with whether it's energy or their emotions or whatever it may be. How many people on a daily basis are recording their every action outside of what they can see? So how much of the stuff does happen in the background that isn't caught? Because obviously if people are recording shit, they're not usually recording themselves from a third person point of view. Although with the amount of surveillance that's out there now, yes, that is more possibility. But also keep in mind, like, so you say that now the amount of surveillance or even like personal surveillance that you can have is more abundant now than it ever was, which I agree with. But the problem is you also have more distractions now. Those are much more abundant than ever, especially like, dude, just go outside and go for a walk. How many people they're not even aware of their surroundings in the real world that could physically come out and touch you that are 5 feet away from them because they're busy staring at their phone or they're listening to music and not paying attention.
True.
Like even driving a fucking car. I mean, how many people when you're on the freeway, they're like staring at their phone and you're like, dude, like you are inches away from killing somebody in your car, and we're talking about like tangible things that you can reach out and touch, like we're not talking about like a mist or a shadow or something that you might catch out of the corner of your eye.
Right.
Especially now, like how many people just kind of hang out on their couch and they're staring at their phone and they're playing video games or whatever. Like what if all of this shit really is around us all the time, but you're too distracted that you can't notice it because there's so much going on, so much like overstimulation of just people in general.
Well, and they talk about kids always being more they don't have their blinders on yet, and so they're
more susceptible to or sensitive to it.
There was a group on Coast to Coast that used to come on. They were called GIS. They were out of
wasn't it like Utah or something? Those
Salt
dudes
Lake
that
City,
used to yeah, I remember that.
And Barbara Macbeth and Brendan Cook were their names, and they used to come on Art Bell once a year or maybe twice a year, and they would just play their EVPs that they captured. But they didn't have anything to promote. They weren't selling anything. And so it really helped lend credibility to whatever they brought, because they're like, hey, we went out and looked for stuff and this is what we found. Take it or leave it, And early on, we did some episodes where we played a couple of EVPs and we tried to, I tried to get your guys' take on what you heard out of them. But I thought that was some of the most interesting radio I ever listened to, and it really inspired me to do stuff like this. But I always felt like their stuff, like I said, they went out, they found stuff, and they brought it to the table and said, we're not giving you any idea of what we think it is. We're just bringing it out there. You make the decision for yourself. And I think when something is presented to you in that fashion, it's actually creepier because it makes you have to think about what you're actually listening to or looking at, as opposed to like someone like Discovery or some, show putting it in front of you and saying, check out this thing on this camera here. We caught a ghost or we caught an EVP, and this is what they're saying. You hear it? Like, it's more, I think when you have to really think about it and analyze it, I think that's what makes it creepier.
It's and the thing too is you guys make up great points. It's you got to think too. Like my whole thing is, and I've said this a million times, but the the mind is such a powerful tool, and if you walk into a house, and I tell you nothing ever happened in the house, but I tell you, there was 2 people murdered in this house. And you believe me, you seriously think 2 people or 3 people were murdered in this house, 25, 30 years ago.
It sounds like you have your Spiricom on right now.
I do apologize for that. That'll be rectified next week. That won't happen next week. I apologize for that sound.
Wait, you're getting a new computer?
And who knows, maybe.
No,
but there'll be no sound next week. Yeah. Anyway. But if you walk into a house and I tell you a bunch of people were murdered in this house, your mind, especially if you have an overactive imagination, immediately things are going to start happening in your mind. You're going to start seeing things. You're going to start hearing things. You're going to, all kind of tricks are going to be played. Now, I'm not saying in this particular case it's different than the story Buddha just mentioned, but I mean, that's where I'm always at with, like, just in general, when people talk about, they go into an old ass house and so many sounds can be accounted for. A rat moving in through the walls can sound like if it's a big enough rat, it can sound like a damn person walking around practically.
Well, rats a whole other slew of problems.
Yeah, I know, but you know what I'm saying. It's just that's where I'm always at with it. But you guys make up a good point. If there's nothing to gain by it, especially in 91, there was nothing going viral. There were no stories, nothing you could put on the internet and try to make fame out of. So I agree with you. It does lend some sort of credibility to it to say, why would they do all this stuff? For what? What's the gain? What's the motive? You look at the Amityville. That whole story right there, while it is a weird story, those people profited off that. They moved out of the house in 1 month, which is crazy in itself. But they, what happened 3 years later, $100 million movie came out.
Right. No.
Well, how about the fact that if somebody dies, you have to make a buyer aware of that.
Only if they're murdered.
If there was a murder in a house, you know what I mean? Isn't it Ohio law that you have to make someone aware of that?
I think even dying, like death.
No, I don't believe so. Not just someone just dying of natural causes in the house. You don't have to let them know.
Yeah, I thought it was murder.
Yeah, it is murder and maybe suicide. I think
suicide for sure.
Yeah, Rob would definitely be able to tell us that one. But I know dying of natural causes, you don't have to tell. Because if that were the case, I mean, so many people die in houses, especially old ones.
I'm texting him and trying to find out right now.
I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, okay.
It says in most cases, if someone has passed away peacefully in a house, there is no legal obligation in most states to require that sellers disclose it. And that comes from a partner of Wells Law Group in Phoenix, Arizona. However, California, South Dakota, or Alaska, there are exceptions to the rule. California, any death on a property needs to be disclosed if it occurred within the last 3 years. The seller must also disclose any known death in the home if the buyer asks. So I guess technically, if it's over 3 years, you don't have to say it unless they ask. Violent deaths are a different story. A murder or suicide, especially one that's highly publicized, is considered an event that could stigmatize the property. Like physical damage, this is seen as something that can affect the home's value. And if it's a violent death, it becomes a marked property that people don't necessarily want to become associated with. And therefore, sellers in most states are required to disclose events like a murder on the property. So, I mean, I guess I could see that. I guess I didn't really think of it like that. I was more looking at like kind of what we were talking about, but I could see now, like, especially like if it was like the Manson house.
Yeah. Rob's saying that in Ohio it has to be disclosed if it is an unnatural death, suicide, murder. So
that's what I thought.
There you go.
All right. Sorry. And Dan.
It's me. All right.
Should we kick it over to Dan? Buddha, are you good? You want to pass it?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right.
Is that a penny whistle?
It is.
I'll just let the music play.
I
won't
need
even
to
talk.
do like the intro of fucking Rockford Files, but it's all like it's just the collage pictures of Dan. And then it's
You
like
can do that.
right here is like where he's like
I just
talking to
watched-
somebody, shaking hands, kissing babies.
I just watched an episode right before I came out, before we did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that show. Even it's long before my time. I wasn't even born when the show was on, but I find it such an awesome show. But anyway, so today's story is going to be actually a real quick one, probably quicker than last week. But I know last week I did the story of OJ's vehicle that he was in during the infamous slow chase. This week I'm just going to do a real quick one here on Al Capone's Cadillac. Obviously everyone knows who Al Capone is, so I don't have to even go into that. But I found a couple things interesting. One of the things about him, I had no idea. I knew the guy was probably rich,
Dude,
but I had no.
Not to cut you off, but Sabian or Saban is screaming for Dan. So in the chat, you got a fan. Dan.
Thanks, Sabian. Thank you, appreciate it.
Say it slower and look into my eyes.
And someone likes my auto gain background hum.
Yeah.
Watch. Oh, okay. Maybe I should keep it.
Yeah. Look at Dan. Oh.
Oh man.
John, you're literally about to lose your fucking button privileges.
No, it's mine. All right. Anyway.
So anyway, yeah. So real quick story about Al Capone here. So. So the one thing that I found amazing about this guy was that I knew he was rich, but I didn't know he was as rich. The guy, in today's money, he would be worth about $1.5 billion.
Wow.
At his peak.
Really?
That's pretty crazy, yeah.
Like just conversion?
Yeah, I mean with inflation. I mean, yeah, converted to today's money, I think he was worth $100 million at his peak in the 20s.
Wow.
So yeah, that'd be like about 1.5 billion today. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, no shit. I didn't think he was worth that much. But anyway, obviously, everyone knows he became the head of the Chicago, mafia. He was involved in a 10-car drive-by that someone tried to, take him out, assassinate him. 10-car drive-by. That's amazing. And he, obviously lived through that. Well, he realized after that happened, that he needed a beefed up vehicle. He needed a car that would protect him and his associates against any kind of crimes, any kind of assassination attempt, since he was now the top head mafia family or head of the mafia family. But he went out and purchased a 1928 Cadillac. It's called a Series 341. They also call it a Town Coupe. And
see one at that show a couple weeks ago?
I did not see one, no. But, I saw cars similar to it. Yeah, I did see some cars similar of the same era, for sure.
Really?
The 1920. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. 20s and 30s.
That's pretty cool.
An interesting thing about this car, too, is, and you can look it up, it's painted green. And this is another thing I had no idea. Talk about times being different. In the 1920s and the early 30s, Chicago, the police cars were painted green, and they used Cadillacs.
Huh.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons he did this. That's one reason he painted this car. I had it painted green.
Hey, Dan. Larry's saying that it was armored. Is that true?
Well, I was definitely going to get to that, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, let him finish the fucking story.
But yes, he is correct. That's one of the things I wanted to get about this car is it actually was the very first civilian armored car ever. Armored cars had been around for a few years prior to this, but they were only for military use. They were not civilians, and presidents weren't even really using. That didn't happen until after JFK was assassinated. That presidents started using bulletproof cars and that.
Did we do an episode on that?
I think we might have. I don't know. I don't remember.
Anyway.
But this car, yeah, so the original specs of the car. It's a 90 horsepower, 341 cubic inch L-head V8. It was mated to a 3-speed manual tranny, so manual transmission, not an auto. It had a humongous 140-inch wheelbase, which is like a truck nowadays. Most of your big pickup trucks have wheelbases not even that big. It had, semi-elliptic leaf springs, 4-wheel mechanical drum brakes, and the interior was, had cloth. Originally, the bodywork was painted black with green accents. So, everything was, from the factory, was pretty damn normal. Nothing crazy there. And he got this from one of his, when you say one of his underworld, I guess it was a person in the family that owned a Cadillac dealer. So that's where he bought it from. But then he decided there was, some modifications that needed to be done to this car, and this is where it gets interesting. So he took the car to a body shop. A guy, his name was Ernest Captron, and he had did some work for Capone prior to his cars, and he did a really good job. So he brought this Cadillac to the shop, and he said, "I want this thing bulletproofed, the entire car, glass and everything." And his son actually recounted, the body shop owner's son recanted the exchange that happened. The father told the guys, his associates, he said, "Look, I don't do this kind of work here." And the associates said, "Well, you do now." So, back then you weren't going to tell people of Al Capone you're not going to do something. So he dropped the car off, and he basically, that's where he cut the rear open, and he started, he inserted steel plating into the doors, into the trunk area. And there was another report, too, that I read where I'm not sure if this was done there or somewhere else, but he had a foundry install 1/4-inch boilerplate all around. It was including under the soft top as well as in the windows, too, thicker windows.
How much weight did that add to the car?
At one point, bulletproof. That added an extra 3,000 pounds.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so 3,000 pounds, and that was 30% more than the curb weight of the Cadillac itself. So basically 30% more, they added that 3,000 pounds onto it.
Man, I would think just doing that, you'd have to upgrade the drivetrain and the suspension, just for that.
I was literally just going to say that next. So, and that's exactly right, Buddha. You're 100% right. They had to modify the V8 engine, which was a 5.6 liter. They had to modify that, and it's not clear to this day how much more than the original 90 horsepower that they was able to obtain, but reports said the Cadillac was fast enough, and in these days it's like a car, or in those days it's like a car going 500 miles an hour. It's reached speeds of 110 miles an hour, which back then that's like incredible, for those days. And it was faster than any car on the road, absolutely faster than any car on the road. But the other things he had done with the car, beside the bulletproofs, he had a siren, installed on it, just like the police used, so people could get out of his way. If he, after they did a drive-by, they needed to get people, they wanted people out of their way, so they put the siren on. He also wanted, of course, his guys to be able to shoot back, right? So the Cadillac was fitted with side windows that could be cranked upward about 2 inches, a 2-inch gap at the base, and that would be just enough for his guys to fit the barrel of a Thompson machine gun right underneath there. So as he's driving by, or as his men are driving by, they can do their drive-by shooting at somebody shooting at them. And that also, had the back window was set up very similar too. The rear window was set up the same way. It had flashing lights mounted behind the grille, so that helped him disguise himself, as a police car, because I told you all the police cars had that same look. A police radio hidden in the glove compartment kept him, him informed of law enforcement activities, which is kind of cool. So, the car, and then after he went, his whole tax thing happened, he went to jail. The car kind of, it's a little bit of a mystery what happened to the car. It changed hands. The couple that owned the body shop, I believe. It had the car for a short time. Then they sold it. They were trying to make a profit on it in a circus as like a showing, something to show off. Then it changed hands in a couple museums. And I believe, as of the most recent thing that I read about the vehicle, is it's at Celebrity Cars, which is located in Las Vegas. And I believe it's for sale. Last story I heard here was in 2020, and it list price was $1 million. And you could not even think about the car unless you deposited $20,000, required before they would even negotiate a price with you. So you had to put down $20,000 deposit before they would negotiate the price. But
$1 million right now.
Yep, so it's the same. Okay, so I didn't think probably too much of it changed.
That's crazy because it says it's sold in like 71 or something for $37,000.
Yes, I did see that. Yes, isn't that insane? But yeah, I thought it was just a really cool thing. Like I said, there's not a lot to the story. I just thought it was really cool how he took this car, and like Larry said, I mean, this was bulletproof. And there was a story that FDR used this car the day, I can't remember if it was the day of or the day after Pearl Harbor. A Secret Service agent for FDR said that they used this car to drive him around. And the problem with that is the Secret Service agent stated that he didn't care for the fact that the car had that the president was out in the open, and it was an open, like kind of a convertible type car, which is obviously not the case. The car has never been, nor as you can look at the photos, it's not a convertible, it's not an open car, it's completely enclosed. So there's a lot of scholars historians that say that just can't be possible. He might have been in some kind of car, that was owned by a mobster, but FDR, but it wasn't Capone's car. So that's all FDR being driven around in this car has always been said, but they say that doesn't seem like that's possible.
Just looking at pictures of this car right now, it's insane. Like, there is no craftsmanship anymore compared to like some of this. Like, you just look at it, and it's just a beautiful piece of engineering.
Completely.
Where did they end up? At fucking Jogga Lake.
What do you mean?
Remember they had that old it was called like the old-fashioned car ride. You remember that? It was on a little rail system.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty much that.
Yeah.
It does look like it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and you're right, John.
Did you ever hop the thing?
What's that?
Did you ever hop the center curb?
All the time.
Did you really?
Oh, I wanted to drive the damn thing off the tracks and drive it around the park.
But did you ever get it over the center curb?
I don't know if I ever did that.
I don't think you could.
Yeah. Well, they really tuned the motor down on that too.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't go very fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, you talked about something John, you're right. I looked at that when I went to that museum a couple weeks ago. I mean, the amount of craftsmanship, even in the 70s. I mean, yeah, I know the cars were kind of, considered somewhat junk, but at least the style of them, at least they had, that's gone, man. I mean, everything is cookie cutter, blobby looking,
Plastic. Everything is plastic.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, you look at these cars in the 20s and 30s and 40s. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm just looking through all these pictures of this thing. It's just like I said, it's just like a piece of history frozen.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. And you
11,
think about
1,111 miles on this bad boy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did forget to mention that, but yeah, he didn't drive it much.
The VIN number is still it when they had it was VIN number 306,449.
Yeah.
The warranty is as is. Drivetrain's rear wheel. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, that's all they had back then.
They said it's 4-speed manual now, though.
Oh, so someone might have been changed at some point.
Yeah. What? So 4-speed plus reverse, right? Or did those cars even have reverse on it?
They had reverse. Yeah, it was a manual transmission. It only had 3 speeds from the factory.
Yeah.
Again, at some point, someone might have that could have been one of the modifications. I didn't read that the transmission was modified. I just knew that the engine was, but that could have been one of them there. Though I don't think they had 4-speed transmissions back in the 30s. That did not come out till much later. As a matter of fact, a 4-speed transmission didn't come out till like the 60s and 70s. So that's something, yeah.
I'm just wondering too, like when. Well, I don't know this, so I'm asking you. But like, when did the standard 5-speed come out?
You mean a 5-speed manual?
Yeah.
That I think that was more of a set. I can't give you an exact answer because that I don't know, but I believe it was probably more in the either late 60s or early 70s.
It was 2006.
Was it really?
No.
Well, I was about to say, I had a 2007 5-speed Scion, so.
Yeah, but. Yeah, I definitely didn't think it was that new. But yeah, it's they've been around. And of course, manual transmissions are pretty much all but dead now. I think there's like 2% of the cars sold have a manual transmission anymore.
Al's FRS is a 5-speed.
Is it?
Sweet, yeah. But, all right. Well, that was pretty cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got one real quick, and this kind of ties, so I'm going to tie a recent news article into a story. So, New York Post reported on this about 2 weeks ago, I think, and I saw it come across, I think, within the last couple days. But it says 93 million miles away, a solar storm brews from the power to prompt a internet apocalypse. The University of California, Irvine assistant professor. I'm not even going to start to butcher this person's name, so I apologize. Presented research last month during the Association for Computing Machinery's annual conference for their special interest group on data communication. In the report, the professor warned that a unmitigated solar superstorm could cause large-scale internet outages covering the entire globe and lasting several months, pointing to inadequacies in submarine cables, a major component of the internet infrastructure. Most of the time, we're protected from the sun's constant littering of radiation called solar wind, thanks to the ionosphere, otherwise known as Earth's magnetic shield. With nowhere to go, those magnetic particles are pulled up into the North and South poles, producing an awe-inspiring auroras before dissipating. A solar storm says, but sometimes solar flares that kick up what's called a coronal mass ejection, a solar storm strong enough to penetrate our shield and wreak havoc on just about anything powered with the electromagnetism, which just about runs the world. So, in the event that a solar flare hits the Earth, it would basically kill off the all electronic devices. And so this kind of ties into the this event called the Carrington event. Have either of you ever heard about it?
I have not.
Buddha?
Nah, I don't think so.
Okay, so this was the Carrington event was a powerful geomagnetic storm on September 2nd, 1859, during a solar cycle 10. A solar coronal mass ejection hit the Earth's magnetosphere and introduced the largest geomagnetic storm on record. The associated white light flare in the solar photosphere was observed and recorded by British astronomers Richard Carrington and Richard Hodgson. The storm created strong auroral displays and caused serious damage to telegraph systems. The now standard unique identifier for this flare is SOL 1859-0901. A solar storm of this magnitude today would cause widespread electrical disruptions, blackouts, and damage due to extended outages of the electrical grid. The solar storm of 2012 was similar in magnitude, but passed Earth's orbit without striking the planet, missing by 9 days. And so some of the things that happened during the Carrington event, obviously it was great. Telegraph people were able to communicate rather quickly, I think. And then also the wires, because there was so much electricity in the air, they were glowing. But it really got me thinking and reading up on this, like if this happened today, like We are so not ready for any of this. And think about everything that is connected electronically.
Right.
And especially now that in this day and age, like where semiconductors are, in shortage, people aren't going to work, they're working remotely. Most of the commerce that's done is done online or in these giant grocery stores with electricity. So like what would happen if this really did, like what would go on if this really happened today?
Widespread looting.
Yep.
Yeah, but at that point, what happens when everything runs out,
Apocalypse.
Do you think society would collapse in on itself if something like this happened?
Oh,
look
absolutely.
look how society acted with the COVID. I mean, look how loony people got in, I absolutely think they would.
I think because it's definitely not something that can be like brought back up in any timely fashion. I think you would see like pockets of people essentially forming like their own little clan. I mean, well, because really, like we're talking
like Walking Dead without the zombies.
Yeah, pretty much like a Mad Max style without all the end of world thing happening. But
think like most cars, unless it was like that car that Capone had, but even so, like Dan, was there any electricity in that car? Aside from like the lights.
Yeah, no. I mean, no. There's no computers at all.
yeah,
Obviously,
all
that's
vacuum tubes for anything.
vacuum. Yeah, I mean, hell, you would have get most of those cars prior to that. You had to get out and crank the damn engine. You couldn't even start it inside the car.
Right. So think about like how far we would be pushed back. So if you didn't have a car like that, all of these cars today run off of computers. You couldn't even ride those. I mean, people would be back to pushing, carts and horses and stuff. And so if you didn't have a horse or an old car, you'd be screwed.
My next week's story is going to kind of lead into that because that was what I was going to do today. But we rely so much on so much technology, and the cars, like you just mentioned, it's getting unbelievable where they're going right now, and it's rapidly. Over just in the last 4 or 5 years, it's rapidly increasing with autonomous cars and cars talking to each other. It's ridiculous. And like you said, I agree with Buddha. I think there'd be just widespread looting. I think people would just imagine if look how people were acting, how it made a news story when Facebook went down for 5 hours or 6 hours. I wonder how many people were having anxiety attacks because they couldn't go on Facebook.
Yeah. Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy to think like, would the world collapse? Like, how could, and I'm trying to wrap my head around while saying this without like going too, loony bin-ish, but like, how could the government operate if there was no electricity?
So let me spin this in the most positive light without going off on a fucking tangent. But was this to happen? No more electricity. Well, okay, you could, you know what I'm saying. Essentially, everything's fried, but you do still have the capability of electricity. Think about it like this. There's no more media. You're not able to get that news to anybody anymore. Meaning, the government has no control over anybody unless they start rolling out like literal troops to enforce whatever bullshit they want to push.
But how do they communicate? And
exactly.
That's
but no, that's the point that I'm getting to. So, it's like a forced decentralization of the federal government, which would be fucking amazing in my opinion, but that's for another podcast, not this one. But think about it. So essentially, you have no more centralized ruling class because all the people that are of the ruling class will just find out that they're fucking useless because they don't actually produce anything. Right. Hence, the federal government doesn't actually produce anything. They just take your shit to quote unquote lead or rule or however the fuck you want to look at it. But the point that I'm making is no more federal government, which now you have these pockets of essentially small communities because all the people that are living in big cities are going to realize, holy shit, we are unable to sustain because we live in a city and none of that shit is actually produced in a city. There's no farms, there's no livestock. There's some manufacturing, but that shit all requires, for the most part, electricity and computers or whatever else you're doing. Like, dude, that essentially is like a reset to society to go, okay, hang on, pump the brakes. We have the technology and the know-how to make shit the way it was, meaning like current, just not broken, but you don't have the ruling class telling you need to abide by this, you need to abide by that. So now, by going back into like smaller pockets of communities, you can essentially decide for yourselves, like, how do you want to live? And I personally think that that's like a great thing, because that's how the fucking country should be in the first place. It shouldn't be, 330 million people ruled over by a handful of fucking dumbasses in Washington. And when I say it out loud, it doesn't really sound that bad, because of the fact that you have people that would, depending on how big the communities are, if you have people in the cities that are, maybe the people that live in the cities are going to be your tech people, yes, but your engineers, your architects, like the people that have the know-how. And then as you move further away from the cities, you get to the suburbs, which you're going to have, the quote unquote, probably the labor force, which would be the skilled trades and all of that. And then as you move further out, you're going to have like the farmers, maybe some industrial stuff that needs more land. You put together a co-op with all of those people, and now you have a community, and you can decide what it is you want to do. And I know I went off on a fucking tangent, but I'm basically just describing like a decentralized society, which was reset just because there's no longer media and no longer a way for the government to tell you this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And the way that they can't they can't get messages. Well, I guess they would still have ham radios and shit, but you know what I'm saying? Like, for the most part, like, I think...
Well, with the amount of electricity in the air, I think it would actually help communications on that front. I do have an expert...
How long would it last, though?
I do have an expert on electricity that's wanting to chime in. So, I'm going to invite him in. It's Nagel. He's texting me. But what was your question, Buddha?
But how long would that last? How long would it last? Would it be an instant and then poof, everything's over? Or is it like it's going to be in like an unsustainable atmosphere for X amount of time?
One thing I was just going to say while you're waiting for him to come in is that, what you described, Woody, you brought up some great points, but in today's society with today's people, you've described a utopia that will just never happen, because you mentioned it before. People their brains are completely fried on social media and, just like you said, staring at their phones all day. We're all kind of somewhat, we all do it here and there too. I'm not going to say I don't do it, but we have a society of people that just nowadays, 30 years ago or 40 years ago or whenever this happened, even 40 years ago. When did this happen again, John? I'm sorry.
1859.
Okay, 1859.
I think you were 2 or 3 around there?
Yeah, I was about 24 years old that time. Yes, yeah, I was getting ready to vote for Abraham Lincoln. Anyway, but yeah, it's just, and I agree with you, Buddha. I 100% actually agree with what you're saying. But unfortunately, this society we live in would just implode. It would completely implode. And if we have any better example, was how people acted when COVID first happened, and people were buying 700 rolls of toilet paper and, cleaning. They were scared to death. They were stocking up on
Y2Kers.
Yeah. That's another thing. That was another example.
In the beginning, you're of course going to have widespread panic and people are going to be freaking out. But then like those people are either going to have to get in line and fucking learn how to be a productive member of society, or they're just going to die out.
Well,
and I don't mean to make it like a utopia. Like, everything is going to have problems. You're going to have looting.
Right.
You're going to have rioting. You're going to have, people essentially like quote unquote warring factions. But the point that I'm making is, even if that shit is still happening, I still think it's a better situation than like a centralized government ruling over everybody else.
Yeah.
And I guess the point that I'm making is like these pockets of communities that they can still choose to trade with whoever they want, interact with whoever they want, but they don't have one ruling class telling you this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you do have those people that want to take zero responsibility for themselves and be told what to do because they're just lazy and fucking useless.
And that's where I was going with it. Those people, Buddha, completely outnumber the intelligent, responsible people that you mentioned. That's the sad thing about it now.
But the beauty of that is that those people can go and live in a community where they're ruled over by one person, and they could be totally happy doing it.
That's
and if
true.
they want to trade with my community, then I'm not going to. Yeah, sure. You guys make something, I'll trade with you. I don't give a shit. Just don't pull that shit on me.
Right.
I know I'm talking about fucking utopian dreams over here. I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I got a little excitable.
I'm going to try and...
You meant to. Don't lie. You meant to.
I know. It's getting all chubbed up over here.
You say you're bringing him in, John?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm looking here. All right. I sent the invite again. Maybe I mistyped it, but yeah, it would be, I don't know if, like I said, it would be a utopia, but I just oftentimes, like, as I'm driving to and from work, I think about, like, is the world just ready for, like,
a reset?
Yeah, but not in the sense where, like, people, like, need to, like, be killed or died. Like, do we just need to, like, let society, like, reset itself to where people can just coexist and not have to, receive their information, like, through community versus, like Buddha says, there's no media telling us what we should and shouldn't believe. Like, each other's actions to one another would be how we communicate and interpret people, as a whole. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think too, you're onto something, and I've said this a while back, not exactly the way you said it, but the reset would start by one thing for sure, and it would be shutting down. And I know we use it. We're using the technology right now. I get it. It's cool. We share music, we share videos, blah, blah, blah. But if you hit the reset button and you shut down social media completely, there's no need for social media. We lived for centuries without social media. You get rid of Facebook, you get rid of Twitter, you get rid of all this shit. You bring the internet back. I'm not saying you get rid of the whole internet. You bring the internet back to where it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. There wasn't all these videos and, people could watch this and get depressed over this and get pissed about this and be part of this, or like Buddha said, this clan or this belief or that belief. Everybody had their own feelings, their own minds, their own personalities. And that is where you start. That's where the reset button has to start, because social media, in my opinion, is the root of a lot of the evil. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, all the stuff in the news recent. Gary, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
All right, there he is. All right. So what do you know about the Carrington event?
Well, you guys said so many things. You'd have to go with your questions. I guess the first thing I'd have to say is, since they did atomic bomb testing in the 50s, they've gone around and rad-hardened all the government electronics and communications and chips and stuff like that. So that was something they had to do with for the Apollo series after they started launching suborbital rockets and stuff like that. They noticed that
would that help?
Radiation was a lot higher.
Would that help when the spacecraft went through the Van Allen belt?
Yeah, all that type of stuff, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, they started noticing this in the 1840s when they started doing weather balloons. There was a guy that was doing radiation testings. So they noticed as he started going higher, background radiation levels would drop. But then after you went over a certain height, I think it was like 10,000 feet, that it started to increase, and that was the first indication that there was radiation coming in from space. But they knew, like, when an electrical, like an atomic bomb goes off, there's an electromagnetic field produced before that. It's part of the flash. And some people even say that they have watched atomic bombs feel like it's, they quote it as like a ghost or a spirit going through them as part of the flash. But that's just probably the strong electromagnetical field. Now, usually when a bomb goes off, it destroys everything that would, you usually care about anyway. Like, there's other problems when the bomb goes off, but for like land tests in Nevada, we knew that from then. And then when the first microchips started being produced, and then they weren't, up until then it was single point transistors were invented in 1947 on Christmas Day, but they weren't anything like we have today. There was all glass tubes and stuff like that.
So, but if the Carrington event happened today, what would happen?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. So the first chips that went up for like the Apollo series, they were pre-production chips. So that was literally about the first integrated circuits went into that. So right from the beginning, the government and NASA and stuff like that knew that we had what they call radiation hardened chips and stuff. So that stuff can all be protected from that. Regular consumer stuff isn't, because it's just a cost saving measure.
So you're saying that the government could still operate because they're protected?
Absolutely. So even the first, they would.
Buddha, we're fucked.
So like all government phones and stuff like that on military bases and all that stuff, they have encryption chips in them that allow them to go to a secure mode. And all that stuff right from the beginning was all radiation hardened. And that was in the 70s they've had that. And they keep upgrading the standards of encryption and stuff like that. So to answer the big question, if today that a big solar event would hit the Earth, what would happen? Well, so all the solar winds and stuff would screw up the field around the Earth. It would shut down a lot of things and destroy a lot of things that weren't grounded or anything that was powered on and stuff like that, and that wasn't radiation hardened. And I'm talking small chips, by the way. It'd be like sticking them in a microwave or something. But anything that was radiation hardened or not on or protected at the time wouldn't be destroyed, and that would be able to be operated pretty quickly. Depending on the disturbances, because particles and stuff would stay in the atmosphere.
I'm just going to
see the disturbance. I mean, it would be measurable for a while.
But okay, so I'm just going to ramble off a couple of things. Desktop computers, would they work?
Most of them, no. Not for anything you'd want them to.
If they were turned off.
Maybe. Depends on where they're at.
Yeah,
Dan's definitely would.
Yeah, it's definitely radiation hardened.
Well, no. Well, so the thing is, when transistors were older, they were bigger and larger. So there's more. So the stuff today is more miniaturized, so it's a lot more easy for the wavelengths of the radiation to just destroy them. So the older stuff would have even a non-radiation hardened fares better in a radiation environment, and it recovers more quickly.
All right. So banking, you think banking's protected?
No, you'd be surprised. A bunch of that stuff still works off the 70s computers that they first built them on.
Yeah.
That's why the Y2K bug was such a big deal, because there's a bunch of old Univax bullshit that operate the entire banking system on like old punch card systems and shit like that in like a basement somewhere.
A lot of that stuff is done through straight text file transactions too, right?
Yeah. So if they have to, but it's even older than that. It's like things still run off punch tape and punch cards in the banking system, because nobody wants to be responsible for the one fucking it up if they have to, change out the system.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So all that stuff's still like that. So the bigger problem is, in 2038, we have the Unicode, the timestamp is going to roll over. So they kind of have to change that stuff.
Well, they've only got 16 years?
Yeah. Well, so they'll put it off to the last minute and then make some big fuss about it and get a government bailout or something. But
So what else? All right. So banking, desktop computers not working, cell phones obviously not working. What about like CB ham radios, those kind of things?
Well, they'd be effective for a few days, so it depends on the particle count.
But would it be
air.
positive effect, not negative?
On occasion, sometimes you get some ionosphere on like continuous wave at like a 2 meter type of deal, and sometimes at night you can get better bouncing off the ionosphere. But no, because it'd be a blanket. The particles would capture in the atmosphere and go around. It'd be mostly a negative effect, but it wouldn't. While it would be measurable for months it wouldn't be anything practical over a few days.
How about Tesla's electric cars, pure electric cars?
Well, there's a lot of chips in there, man. If they didn't
Right.
break, if you had it in like a concrete bunker or a lead box or underground or in your basement or something, or you had a pull-in garage, and the initial blast didn't get it, it might work fine, but you're probably not gonna be able to charge it anywhere.
Any adverse like health effects? Like I'm sure like people. What about with people with pacemakers in there?
Yeah, they would just die
Fuck.
Wow.
instantly.
Wow.
They would just fall over dead as soon as it hit the earth. If they were out standing outside, they'd just drop over like their heart stopped because their heart just stopped.
Literally.
What would be considered a safe depth for like a basement, or like obviously a bomb shelter would be fine.
Yeah,
but what
Buddha
about
just
something
finished
like
his studio, so he would like to keep it intact.
He's going to build an extra 15 feet below.
right?
He's just gonna take the console. It's gonna be like a Bruce Wayne Batcave thing where it just goes into the floor on a hydrant.
Yeah, big shipping container just. Regular basement depth, or maybe a 2 basement depth, so 4 meters or something like that wouldn't be unreasonable. Depends on how thick the concrete is, or if you use brick or like that. We're not talking anything crazy, but I mean, if you had like, if you knew it was going to happen and you had a couple of days to prepare, you could like weld just a 1/4-inch steel box together or something like that, and that would probably be enough to stop the spike. All you're really interested in is the spike.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you might be able to get away with a Faraday gauge.
I was
Like
just going to
chicken
ask
wire and a bunch of shit.
when you had talked about making a 1/4-inch steel box. I was just thinking, like, what if you made a Faraday cage? Would that actually be enough?
It depends on the pulse. You'd have it'd be a lot better than nothing. But you have it's a wave going through, so it'd have to be generally 30. It's like on the front of your microwave. You can see through it because there's a bunch of little holes there in the door. So to the microwaves, that's a solid door. They can't come through those holes. So they don't even exist from the perspective of the wave, of the frequency, of the energy of the microwave. So you have to watch out on Faraday cages because like a chicken wire Faraday cage or something like that, it might let a bunch of that more high frequency stuff through.
Huh. Man.
So what about like climate and environment? Would that have an effect? Like if you live in like a super heavily wooded area, would that have any potential effect on like possibly reducing it?
Like fires or like that? Or
No,
how
I
they
mean
grow?
like the pulse itself. Like as opposed to like a flat, if we're talking about waves, like if you live on a flat desert and there's no resistance for anything at all, and if you're saying if it's a high frequency wave, like that's just going to go everywhere because there's no resistance. But if you're
So you're saying if you lived in a denser space with the wave?
yeah, like with high frequencies being directional, I would be curious as to if you lived in like a heavily wooded area, if it would just essentially be absorbed and broken up almost like a diffuser by the amount of just brush and trees and forest and all that stuff. Now, if they're low frequency with it being like more omnidirectional, just kind of going everywhere, I would think of it being more like a blanket, but I would be curious as to if high frequencies would actually be broken up in that way.
Well, the difference between like low frequencies and high frequencies being like directional or omnidirectional, all frequencies basically radiate in all directions. It depends on much more of the radiator, the wave pattern at the source. But the reason you can round it off to lower frequencies or omnidirectional and high frequencies are much more directional and short-lived is because there's a band where you start going higher and things are absorbed more because the wavelengths are lower. So it's the same thing as the microwave door, right? Like wavelengths, they interact with materials in different ways. So like FM radio, most of those stations, their wavelengths are on like 2 to 4 meters, right? They're like 10 feet in wavelengths. The waves are giant for the propagation of those, so they go through a lot more things. But then you get like water is pretty sensitive around 2.4 gigahertz, which is why microwaves were designed for that, because it jiggles the water molecules. So they're actually really well absorbed by things like food or the human body. So that's why Wi-Fi doesn't travel that great, especially if you walk in front of it, right? Your body ends up absorbing a lot of that radiation. Now, like Wi-Fi, it's a really small, we're talking like a standard home Wi-Fi router is probably at the level of 50 or 100 milliwatts. It's really not that strong at all. So even if you contained all of that, it's still 1/10 of a watt, which doesn't even warm things up, right? Like if you think of like an incandescent light bulb, right? You could put a 2-watt light bulb in your mouth and it would just feel warm, But the higher frequency stuff, it's also dependent on the power. So this would be so strong that the higher frequency, it wouldn't be as direct. It would go everywhere because it's so strong. You wouldn't really notice too much of a difference. So everything would be blasted with a dose of radiation over the whole spectrum.
So, okay. Go ahead.
Well, the term radiation there is used loosely, like light's electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah.
Right? That's just a particular frequency our eyes happen to be sensitive to, so we call it something different. But that light is the same thing as a radio wave. Right? So it's all electromagnetic pulses.
All right. So let's just turn this around real quick and just say your guess. Now, we've all kind of waited on our guess. If something like this were to happen, what do you think is the net effect as far as society goes?
Oh, it's definitely going to be a shitstorm, but not as bad as you think, mostly because it can be prepared for, right? We started thinking about this as soon as we noticed these fields coming off the bombs. And we knew this was a problem with the sun and stuff like that, but the solar cycle was like 11 years. People won't really worry about that. And they still aren't, because everybody is assholes and nobody wants to be proactive. Everybody wants to be reactive, except for when it's the military that wants to spend, 5 orders of magnitude of what something's worth so they can have big balls and jerk off with their defense stuff and whatever, right? Boys and their toys. So all the, like the electrical network, for instance, there's zones over the country of where the grid is connected and it's interconnected. We'll just use, North America as an example. So there's one basically around Texas, and then you have the northeastern seaboard in the west and a couple in the center, and then it kind of hooks up into Canada over New York and stuff like that. That's why a few months ago when there was some problems down in Texas, it was pretty much just in Texas and a little bit of Oklahoma, because they have a part of their grid that's the chunk of the grid, that sector.
Don't forget, in our backyard, a squirrel caused the entire blackout in 2000. What was that? 2000. I forget. Was that 2003? The blackout.
2003.
Yeah.
Yep. 2003.
Yeah, that happened right here in good old Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, real easy to do.
Thanks, squirrel.
Yep, one squirrel's tail jumping off a wire or something. And,
yeah.
Bam.
Fuck.
So when that stuff does happen, the grids are interconnected in a way where they can shift power where they want. It wasn't.
Didn't work out that way.
Not too long after 9/11. Well, because they didn't want to. So they could. That doesn't mean they will. So they could, if they wanted to, they could shut down the zones or redirect entire zones' power to somewhere else on different zones and stuff like that. So there's things that have priority. You think they'd be like hospitals and stuff like that. They don't give a shit. It's all the government stuff in the data centers and all that stuff that they redirect power to. So unfortunately, fortunately, all the civil defense things and that stuff would still work, but also all the government bullshit would mostly still work. They don't use the regular internet for a lot of things. They still have separate backbones for more secure protocols and stuff like that. So all the stuff that they'd want to work, we spend good money to make sure still would work.
But I guess my question is, would it be better or worse for society, given the fact, like our initial thought was, well, the government and the media would collapse because there was no way for them to keep in contact or propagate information. You're saying it's it's the opposite. And so they'll be fine and we will not be fine. That's the question. Gary, did he disconnect? All right.
Hold on. Yeah, my screen turned off.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, my screen turned off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. But even like the government cell phones and stuff like that, they're all rad hardened, and then they have priority on the cell towers.
No, I know. What I'm asking is that like all of us had made a guess that, okay, if this did happen, the government wouldn't be able to communicate, media would not be able to propagate information. So in some ways we would have this reset to society and culture that we would rely on each other to self-govern and communicate information. And you're saying that it might not necessarily be the case, whereas the government would be able to handle an event like this and probably still allow information to be communicated as it is traditionally done now.
Yeah, without even blinking. It'd be a shit show for normal people, but the government stuff would be unabated. It basically, we've just seen this happen with the COVID stuff, at the first lockdown like last year. That, minus the media. The media would kind of fall out. But everything that happened with society and people would be about the same, and the government would keep working fine.
Same
Which is
old
what I
sectors,
explained.
the private sectors, the more hidden sectors would work fine. The public stuff, like, the national parks or whatever, they don't give a fuck about that.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Well, thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, no problem. You guys were just making such a show that I had to
Couldn't
couldn't
contain
listen
yourself.
and not say, I had to say something.
Yeah. Also, speaking of which, do you want to confirm how many Mountain Dews you've drank in a single sitting?
I would do that not just once. I would come home from school in high school.
This is going back to the conversation earlier at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, I would come home from high school, and soda used to be really cheap. It used to be on sale. You could get 5 for $10 on a 24 cube pack.
Yeah.
So I have a photo somewhere of maybe 40 or 50 of them in my garage. Because the sale would go on every couple of weeks, so we would go down in truckloads and buy soda. So I would come home from school and pick up a cube of Mountain Dew and go in and sit in the house and play Gears of War on Xbox and whoop ass and drink a Mountain Dew about every 15 minutes.
Dude.
So, which isn't that fast, but then I would do that all night. So I would easily drink a cube a day.
Yeah.
So that's 24 cans.
Yeah.
The most I get up to, I could get up in the 30s. I could get to about a cube and a half. But that was from like 3 p.m. to like 4 a.m. And then I'd sleep for like an hour and then go to school and sleep all day in school.
Literally piss.
And then like ace the tests.
Crystalled sugar.
It can definitely looks the same way going in as it does coming out. And I think that might be a marketing thing.
Yeah. Do the do.
Do the do. Hell yeah. I won Xboxes and a bunch of other shit. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's nearly like 10,000 liquid calories a day. And
Yeah,
that's
but
over
you're
the
not
LD 50 of caffeine.
But you weren't that big of a guy from that. Like you didn't look the part.
Well, when I graduated high school, I was 280 pounds when I graduated high school, and then
really? I didn't know that.
Long after that, I was having all these other dietary issues.
Yeah.
So I stopped drinking soda for a few years, and I got down to 165.
Wow.
Yeah, so I lost over 100 pounds. Recently, I've been back on the dew since the pandemic. A couple other things. I'm back up a little bit. It goes on quick, but yeah, that caffeine and stuff like that. Do the do. I was doing it. I tell doctors and stuff like that. They look at me like I'm crazy. It's like I know, like that's over the LD50 of caffeine and stuff. Like that's more than a lethal dose to kill you. Just in the caffeine.
Well, you helped move Microsoft a little further in the market.
Mm.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in. I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to hang up. So we'll talk to you soon, though.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have
Later.
a good evening.
See ya.
All right. There's Gary Nagel. Interesting stuff. It's always interesting to hear. Like I said, he's got a really good technical background, so makes us sound a little bit smarter, or at least me.
I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the government took care of itself.
Yeah, right. Oh, all right. Well, time to land this ship. Excellent show tonight, gentlemen. Great stories, good news, good talks, good debates. We'll be back next week, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I recently learned that the standard was it only happens certain parts of the year. It's not always Eastern Standard. So I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm just trying to sound cool and talk enough up to the bumper point. So in that case, Dan, when's the next Illusionary Apollo song coming out?
Oh, man. Well, I got an instrumental I'm working on right now. That'll probably be out in like less than a month. That's just a plain instrumental, but the other song's probably not going to be till next year sometime, early next year.
All right. Well, keep that in mind for when you want to release the song. So.
Hell yeah.
All All right. Well, for Dan Rady, Steve Gibson, Gary Dang, Rob Tyler, and everyone else that's popped in over the last few years, this is John Vincent. Mistake on the Lake. Say goodnight, Booty.
I got 2 things to add real quick.
Oh, hold on.
No, you're good. Just let it roll. 5 speeds became widespread in the 80s, and Al Capone did have neurosyphilis. And on that note, good night, Buddha.
Do you think he got,
You fucking ruined it. Jesus,
What do you mean?
come on.
All right. Good night, everybody.
We did the send-off.